Hi, I'm Athira, and we are here to review the first chapter of the book Penniye Nadimayanal by E.V. Ramasamy, which was translated by Meena Kandasamy to Why Were Women Enslaved? Uh, so I thought we'll have a brief introduction of the book and Periyar initially and go on to the review. So Periyar, the title Periyar was well known. Like we would have all heard of Periyar. He's also known as Tandai Periyar, and he was a social activist, rationalist, atheist, and feminist. And he advocated for the rights of Dalits and women. And he firmly believed in science, and he thought that rationality would eradicate all these superstitions and myths which were brought into by religion and epics and all. So he stood by rationality, and he advocated strongly against elitism, Brahmanism, capitalism, patriarchy, and religion, because all of these legitimized the discrimination and the inequality across people of different castes and class and gender. So he was he advocated very strongly against all of these. And if we look into Periyar's activism, it coincides with the freedom struggle. And in 1919, he joined the International Congress, but he later, after 6 years, he quits the Congress, saying Gandhi and Congress were agents of elitism and Brahmanism. He couldn't go with the politics of International Congress then, because it didn't address issues of Dalits nor women. He even questioned the notion of Purna Swaraj or complete freedom. The condition of women and Dalits were so pathetic that he was not sure of the idea of freedom, as in he couldn't. As in, he questioned the fact that who would get freedom, and the condition of Dalits and women were so pathetic that he questioned the notion of Purna Swaraj even before independence. So after that, later he joined Justice Party, and he led the self-respect movement. And in 1944, he launched the Dravida Kazhagam, with a grand vision of resisting the hegemony of Indo-Aryan culture. He planned to resist the hegemony of Indo-Aryan culture, the imposition of Hindi, and he resisted this by invoking an pride, or invoking the self-worth by the identity of being a Dravidian. So he questioned all these notions of Indo-Aryan hegemony, Indo-Aryan culture, by invoking the identity of a Dravidian. And he established the self-respect movement, as he believed that only the recognition of one's self-worth will help in the liberation of people. So without realizing one's self-worth, the people won't question any of these oppressive structures. So in order to question these oppressive structures, in order to realize these oppressive structures, one must realize that one is worth of one's own self. There should be self-respect, and there should be a dignity. So that is what Periyar stood for. He stood for self-respect, and he understood and he advocated that one should realize one's self-respect and stand for it, so that we will fight all these oppressive structures, including Brahmanism and patriarchy. So and that's it. So, considering his activism, we'll have to mention how he saw women, how he saw people from lower castes. He always discouraged men from participating in women's struggle for freedom and for rights. as he believed that no one had the right to represent or speak for an oppressed person or oppressed group other than the oppressed group itself. He thought that no one can stand in behalf of a Dalit, stand in behalf of a woman and speak for their rights. Rather, a woman, rather women or Dalits should speak for their own rights. Um, so, uh, so I'd like to quote him here to make clear how he expressed it, as in how he thought that why an oppressed group have to speak for itself. He have said to quote, "Have cats ever freed rats? Have foxes ever liberated goats or hens? Have whites ever enriched Indians? Have Brahmins ever given non-Brahmins justice? We can be confident that women will never be emancipated by men." So this is his quote. So he have always advocated for people who are oppressed to speak for themselves rather than others speaking on behalf of them. He always advocated them to come for forefront and speak for themselves. Mm, and it was in 1938, E.V. Ramaswamy was given the honorific title of Periyar, Periyar, which meant the Great One, by the Madras-based Progressive Women's Association. And if we Google about Periyar, we will see he is hailed as a radical feminist. He has always questioned the notions of um, the structures, the existing structures of family, marriage, love, and all. He haven't stayed away from questioning the so-called private space, the private or personal space, which was considered out of politics, which had to stay out of politics, like the second wave feminism's motto, the saying personal is political. Just like that, he always questioned the personal or private, the so-called personal or private space, and questioned all these structures within it. He have uh, questioned the concept of marriage, the concept of traditional marriage, how love is considered to be something divine, and he questioned the divinity in it. He advocated for contraceptive rights, and he also advocated for equal rights in divorce and property rights. So he have questioned all those things which were considered as private things, or things not to be discussed in a public platform. He questioned all of this because all of this were subjugating women. All of these were in place in a system which helped to subjugate women in a very systematic manner. So all of these were marriage, love, family, all of these were in place to subjugate women. And so he's questioned all of these and their traditional working. So, and also, Periyar understood language as a site of subjugation and struggle. He pointed out the sexist nature of Tamil language. He has also pointed out the sexist nature of Sanskrit. When we go through the first chapter, we'll see it. And he pointed out the sexist nature of Tamil, and he went asked to coin similar terms for sex selective words, like he was against the sex selective usage of terms as prostitutes, or the association of chaste with women, or association of virginity with women. He always had a problem with sex selective usage of words, and he even created words which words like Vidavan and Vibhajaran for there was a lack of similar words in Tamil for the male widow or the male prostitute. So he created words for such words um, in order to make it clear that if both the sexes should be treated equally, both the sexes should be uh, viewed or respected equally. Mm, and so it was in 1925, May 2, the he started the weekly Tamil weekly Kudiyarasa, and this book, the book we are discussing right now, the book Why Were Women Enslaved, is a collection of essays and articles, particularly on the issue of gender, uh, that he wrote during 1926 to 1930s. So, the first chapter, Chastity, was written in 8 January 1928. And that's it about the book and Periyar. So now we'll go through mm, the preface and get an understanding of what he tried to say through the essays. So what all issues were discussed in this book. It can be seen. It can be very easily understood uh, his preface to the book, and uh, so the first chapter is chastity, which we discussed today. And while in that chapter, he emphasis on the on why it is stressed, why he questions why it is only stressed on women, why it is attached to women, why chastity is attached to women, and men think that it is not something that to be attached to them. He questions why is it so. And in the second, and we'll go through it later, in the second chapter, Valluvar and Chastity, he questions certain things within Tirukural, and how such a literature which have been celebrated all through the history of all through the history have misogynistic texts inside it. He says that it even suggests that husband and wife is just like a master and slave, and he explains it in reference to this chapter of the yeah, this is chapter of Tirukural. So and he says that doctrine shouldn't be followed in an obstinate and blind manner, because one should take into consideration that no doctrine is timeless and universal. He says that none of the doctrines that we follow, whatever those are religious or cultural texts, none of them are timeless or universal. Everything can be seen in terms of the condition that we are living in, the time that we are living in. So everything can be considered on the time and context. It cannot be taken as an universal or timeless things, the doctrines. And the third chapter, Love, it questions the false notions about love and how divinity is attached to it. Rather, he questions such why it is being uh, something it should be something between people, rather it is considered to be otherworldly or divine. And in the fourth chapter, he discusses about the right to divorce. He explains why marriage should be merely an agreement between individuals who choose to stay together because of their own reasons. Two adults who choose to stay together because of their own reasons. That is how the self-respect movement also paved way for the self-respect marriage. How two individuals stay together, because and also they could break the agreement whenever they want. There was no divinity attached to it. It was it was just, marriage was considered just as an agreement between two people, rather than something holy or divine. And the fifth chapter, it discusses why remarriage is not wrong, why one shouldn't be staying, why women are forced. It questions why women are forced to stay in marriages where they don't love the partner, why they have to be uh, chaste. In order to prove their chastity, they'll have to tolerate everything and stay in the marriages. Why would anyone have to stay in the marriages, rather than if they have if they don't feel a connection, if they don't have reason to stay together, why can't they leave the marriages, and why can't they remarry, why can't they live with someone they love, uh, or for whatever reasons they may have, why can't they leave it and live their lives. And the sixth chapter talks about prostitution, where he also discusses about the language, the usage of the word prostitution and prostitutes, just to talk about women and how it is morally um, seen as morally wrong, and why is it always about women and the men are not questioned. um, and um, and in the seventh chapter, he discusses about the state of widows, how widows were cruelly treated within the household, how they were made invisible. And in the eighth chapter, he along with the seventh chapter, he discusses why there is a need for uh, property rights. Um, and in the ninth and tenth chapter, respectively, he discusses about birth control. He saw motherhood, or the role of being a mother was attached to woman, and she had to bear the full responsibility of the child and of the upbringing of taking care of everything. Periyar saw this as a burden for women, which stopped them from coming out and living to their fullest. So he questioned the idea of motherhood which was in place, and he advocated for birth control. He also questioned. He also suggested that masculinity should be destroyed for women's liberation. In order for women to be liberated or get their liberation, in masculinity should be destroyed. The existing concepts of masculinity should be destroyed in order for women to uh, be liberated. Uh, and and towards the end of the preface, he says that, moreover, it is our opinion that in today's situation, the ideas in this book should be useful to people of any religion, any nationality, and any community. Therefore, it is essential that not only women, but even all men, with feelings of empathy and equality towards men, buy this book, read it, and reform themselves. So, whoever haven't read this book yet, I would suggest to follow Periyar's words here and read the book. So that's it about the preface. Now we can go into the review. And um, okay, so the chapter at hand is chastity. Um, the the word chastity, uh, we all understand the word chastity differently. And it is usually attached to women more than it would be ever spoken of, ever spoken about a man. And I was just looking for definitions. I was just googling for it, and we can see what chastity is being defined as. And one of the references that I would like to quote here is the Oxford reference, where chastity is defined as either complete abstinence from sexual activity, especially in females, or the virtuous exercise of it to just the right extent. For instance, in the Catholic natural law tradition, solely in marriage and solely in order to produce children. So, as per Oxford's definition, um, they also defines how it is specifically attached to females, how chastity is something related to us. It is not related to women, but then it is made as something specifically about women, or it would never come up when we talk about men, or when we talk about the morality of men. It is never questioned, but chastity in many sense is questioned when it comes to women, and it is mostly used in terms of women alone. Here the word karpa, or it has roots from the word also have the meaning as in to learn. And mm, here he tries to understand it in context of saying karpana padavadu solthirambame, which means as written here, living up to one's words. And which denotes that the concepts of integrity, truth, and abiding by an agreement. So the chastity here means that integrity, truth, and abiding by an agreement. Why should these qualities, why should the quality of being truthful or abiding by by an agreement or integrity be associated with women alone? Why can't it be associated with any sex? If in his in the other's terms, um, it should be equal for everyone. These qualities should be associated with everyone rather than attached to one particular sex. So here he also mentions how if we see the word karpa as a whole, how it indicates the virtues of woman or maglir nirai as or nirai. The term virtue is also associated to women. How how these things, how these virtues, how these words which explain such values of integrity, truth, or virtues, how these qualities are associated with and questioned only in women and never comes up in the case of men. He also says that nirai actually means indestructibility, firmness, and chastity. We might not understand what indestructibility means here, but he further explains that the word indestructible here actually means pure. Purity is something that have been always associated with women being pure, the upper caste being pure, or the lower caste being impure. So purity is something that have been creating all these divisions. Purity as such is not, but the notions that we have created around purity is something which have created this divide between castes and genders. Mm, by the word indestructible, here it means pure, that is unspoiled and unblemished. Unspoiled and unblemished. A chaste woman is unspoiled and pure. Whereas a woman who would have sex on um, her terms would be impure and spoiled and blemished. So is destructible, can be said is destructible. So he questions this, the idea of chastity being attached to women alone, and why would someone be impure or someone be spoiled just because of sex or anything? But how can we uh, how can we categorize people in that way? And uh, and he also says about how virginity also in this context, virginity also means virginity and chastity is also, sorry, virginity and chastity is also used in the same meaning. Okay, so how women have to stay pure, how women have to stay unspoiled or unblemished. So the concept of chastity or virginity, restricts women from being their own individual self and making opinions for themselves. Rather, they'll have to constrict themselves into such notions and think about being chaste, being pure, and restricting themselves for the sake of pleasing the moral codes. So he questioned the moral codes that are in place and why is it just for women. And he also he also questions the term padivrata, which is used in the Indo-Aryan language Sanskrit. Padivrata or loyal wifehood. It literally, he explains that it literally means the wife who sees her husband as god, or Padi means husband, and Vrata means taking a vow. Padi also means authority, master, or leader. So it basically means that taking a vow to the master or leader or authority or husband. So what he suggests is the word Padivrata itself suggests being slaves to men, being slave to a man. So he questions the notions. The uh, notion suggested in the word Padivrata. And he also talks about how words within Tamil were not used in their sense, and how those were just used in case of epics or religious books. Rather, those words could have been used in regular life. The words like Talaivi and Nai or Naigi. And he questions why. Uh, uh, he also says that in the traditional sense, people won't use the in the traditional conditions, people won't use the word Talavi, because a submissive or a slavish person cannot be seen as Talavi. So in that sense also, the words were not used. The words have been gone invisible, or were just used in case of epics, or in present context in the case of movies also. And and here and hereafter he mentions about his he says that he's a bit confused about the stand of Tiruvalluvar. And he says that he feels it is he says that he feels that it tries to Tirukkural tries to propagate the slavish ideas, or bring about inferiority in women, because in the sixth chapter of Tirukkural, Varkei Tunai Nilam, the value of a life partner, and the 91st chapter, Penvali Cheral, being led by women, and few other individual couplets, it is said that it would rain instantly on the roads of a woman who worships her husband instead of God. A woman should take care of her husband. And such notions were propagated. Like in Tirukkural, it suggests that a woman should always take care of husband, be humble to her husband. It suggests that women should always stay inferior or stay submissive to her husband in order to be the ideal, or the big, or the good woman. um, and thereafter he also, if people have a problem with criticizing Tirukkural, or criticizing the misogyny in it, he also suggests that I will read it from here. I would ask them to finally pay attention to the fact that if Tiruvalluvar had not been a man but a woman who had written such couplets, would they have portrayed such ideas? Likewise, if women themselves had written books and dharmashastras about women, if women had written the definition of the word chastity, would they have given the meaning of Padivrata for chastity? So here he also he is also trying to discuss another important issue, which he have included in his activism, where he clearly said that the oppressed group must speak for itself rather than any other privileged group standing on its behalf and speaking for it. It is the same. It is almost the same sense which is discussed here, because if women were the one who wrote all these religious scriptures, all these epics and all, would they ever attach such notions to those words, such as chastity or Padivrata? Would they attach women as the sole light bearers for such terms? Like, would women have to guard the morality of all the existing structures? He questions uh, all this here. And And he also says why chastity, the term for chastity is hidden in case of in context of men. Why there is no particular term which means or which produces the meaning of chastity in terms of men. He suggests that it is male domination is the only reason why the word denote that men have chastity has been hidden from our languages. So he suggests that men do have chastity and it is never discussed. It is hidden from our language because of male dominance. If it should be he I think he understands it as good qualities which truth, integrity, and staying by an agreement. All these are good qualities, but then these qualities were never attached to men. It should be attached to men and it shouldn't be hidden. That is what he suggests here. And okay he also mentions how it was perceived that the Western way or the West had better conditions. The European women had better freedom than the Indian women. How we thought in an all in if we thought of the world as a whole, how it was seen as European women enjoyed more freedom. He says that. It is not true, and he explains it with how uh, with how the concept of the words husband and wife and how the laws relating to it itself made this clear. How the laws in European countries regarding being husband and wife made this clear, because it was necessary in the European countries for a wife to be obedient to her husband. So obedience was required as a criteria to be in marriage. So it can be treated as a ground for divorce if a wife ever dared to disobey her husband. So such concept was there in the Western countries also. And the Victorian morality was also very restrictive. It was not something uh, as we picture it. If we don't have an idea of how it worked in the Western world, or how the Victorian morality has suppressed women, even their clothings, even in any case, in any area, it is there. But I'm just suggesting how the dress itself would make it clear that the restrictions were very very in place. And he also criticizes about the Padda system, and he mentions um, how these all this made all these systems were made in order to restrict women's freedom, and how all this have to be overthrown in order for women to enjoy freedom, and how women themselves should try to understand this and should speak for themselves in order to get out of all these oppressive structures which kept them in place, as in kept them in place which they wanted, which these oppressive structures wanted. So that's it. And okay, and he also explains how the term chastity shouldn't be uh, uh, shouldn't be what different for different sexes. It should be either it should be equal for both the sexes, or it shouldn't be in place. As in, if women really want freedom, the concept of chastity that deals a different justice to each sex must be destroyed, and an equal self-governing concept of chastity for both sexes must be in place. And and the present notions of chastity should be destroyed. If the present notions of chastity contains the notions such as purity and indestructibility in it, so such concepts should be definitely destroyed. And the concepts like truth and integrity, such concepts are can be both valued in any person. So it shouldn't necessarily be associated with one particular sex, but it should be reformed and should be met with equal justice is for both sexes. And cruel religions and laws which dictate women to bear with their husbands' beastly actions for the sake of chastity must be destroyed. He suggests that there are religious scriptures and religious customs, rituals, and epics and all, and even the state's law. All of this dictates women to stay with their husband, or to stay in a broken marriage, in an abusive marriage, in order to be chaste, in order to be pure, in order to be something they don't want to be, something they'll have to be in but taking in all of the abuse in just for the sake of being chaste. So he thought that all these laws and all these restrictions which made women stay in abusive relationships in order to prove chastity should be overthrown. And even and he also suggests that the true concept of chastity, which is a natural concept of chastity, which is also an independent concept among should be created among people, but it should never be through compulsions, as the present concept is made as, as the present concept is being right now. It should never be the concept of chastity should never be imposed. Rather, it should be an independent concept where both the sexes have equal consequences or equal justice, rather than one particular sex will have to sacrifice or have to go through a lot of violence and abuse, or have to restrict their freedom for the sake of being fit into the present concept of chaste. We'll have to create another concept of chastity which is independent, where people themselves, irrespective of their sex, people themselves can attached to these notions of chastity, and it should never be attached to one particular sex, um, and mm, it should never promote being the slavish ideas, or it should never be enforced. No one should be forced to be chaste in this sense. Mm, and he also says that this is one of the most abominable acts, most cruel acts that human society has made, and the sufferers are women. So that is it. That is all about the chapter. So I think we have reviewed the first chapter, and so I'll end by saying Periyar's political stance as a radical alternative for today's right-wing politics, and and um, okay, so today's politics tries to discriminate against the marginalized and try to erase diversity in the name of unity, whether it is in the name of religion or nation. Periyar have always stood against this and still continues to inspire people. So that is it. I think it is open for questions now.
Yeah. Do you think that the views of Periyar and chastity is necessary in this, like kind of society where still people are started living their life with this, kind of not giving much important to chastity or such an idea. Do you think that his views now it is needed, or how he?
Okay, so my opinion is it is definitely needed, even though there have been changes in the way we see virginity or chastity, or the way people have been expressing their sexuality. There is still a major. Uh, there is still a large group of people who wouldn't question these notions of chastity or virginity, or many of the things, the existing structures, let it be the case of caste or gender. People don't seem to question any of it. That is why I think that is why we have a right wing government, because a majority would uh, go for such things, because people still follow superstitions and the idea of such uh, idea, or the bringing in such moral concepts just for women, just attached to women. So I think it is still necessary to discuss the concepts of chastity, and it is very necessary to discuss about the politics that Periyar put forward. So here is another question, which asks how women themselves can get rid of these ideas. Even having a relationship is still secretive among most of the people. So when Perrier suggests that women should speak for themselves, he never suggests that uh, men should men should be exclusive of the whole thing. Anyway, we are all living together, and men will have to change. People will have to change. Upper caste people will have to change. Men will have to change. Everyone would have to change. We ourselves would have to change the way we think of these concepts. So when we say women themselves should come forward and try to bring about changes, it doesn't mean that it should exclude anyone. Rather, it means that in a let me say, in the context of Periyar itself, when he quit Congress, he said that he expressed that Gandhi or Congress would never question the Brahminical patriarchy. In today's term, we can say it as Brahminical patriarchy, but he said that they would never question Brahmanism or elitism. So, um, and he also said that people from the oppressed groups should speak for themselves. It is because people from the oppressed groups know their experience through their own lives. They have lived experiences, and we trying to speak on behalf of someone would never provide voice for them. Only in cases where we can use our privilege for making space for others, it would be helpful. Rather than that, if a man speaking for woman, he would never know the lived experiences of a woman. In today, if we are trying to say it in today's time, if a cisgendered heterosexual man is trying to speak for a lesbian uh, gender gender fluid person, it wouldn't be just it wouldn't be right to do so, because the person's lived experience is very different from the ideas which a man have, and this man will have other platforms for expressing his views, rather than the lesser privileged person. And we should try to speak for um, we should never try to speak on behalf of someone else. Rather, we should speak for ourselves. It it is because um, it is not to exclude others, but it would bring about the real issues, or the reality uh, of that group, rather than someone else using the oppressive groups as props, um, or as what for what or anything. We should use we should create space, and we should speak for ourselves, which will bring the reality to the world.